Hi, everyone. Today, I have invited someone to have a chat with me about a very important topic, which is mentorship. I recently put out an episode of my little series, Ask a Career Coach, where I touched upon the idea that mentorship is valuable and you have to be proactive about it. You have to go out there and approach somebody and attempt to at least make a request for this to be a part of your life. So today, my friend Kevin Frick kindly agreed to have a chat with me about mentorship. He is a mentor and he spreads the word about the value of mentorship and encourages others to take it up. And I'm going to let Kevin introduce himself a little bit further.
Sure, thank you. So my name is Kevin Frick. I am the Vice Dean for Education at the Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. I originally trained as a health economist and spent much time in the School of Public Health as a faculty member. And in addition to helping to run the school and think about the academic programs and all the other things that go on there, in my personal life as an alumni of Penn State, in the community in Baltimore, and helping students and junior faculty at Johns Hopkins, I've really enjoyed mentoring and have started to think about, I know how I do it, but let me learn a little bit more about the principles and try to add to the discussion about why more people should be doing it, how is it best done, and how to think about what fits for different types of individuals as opposed to just, here's the way I do it and it kind of sort of works. And so I think it's a really exciting topic area and I'm happy to be in the discussion today.
That's amazing. And if you're watching this and you don't know who I am, my name is Lana. I am a career strategist and coach with Two Steps Forward Consulting that I founded about a year ago. And I love working with people who need career strategy, essentially people that need to take everything about themselves, review it, analyze it, form a very good solid strategy so that their skills are paired up with their values. And so that, developing a criteria on how to evaluate opportunities, this is really, really important. Sometimes things come your way, you don't know how to say yes, you don't know if you should be saying yes, you don't know if you should be saying no. So this is what I do. I take a person, I look at them in very great detail, and I work with them for about 2 months to actually get to the bottom of what they want and what would make them happy. And this is quite an exciting process. So like we said about a million times already, we're talking about mentorship today, and I have 3 questions for Kevin today. My very first question is, why is mentorship so rare? So just a little bit of background. I'm 39 years old. I've worked for about 15 years in various technical fields, and not once have I seen an official mentor-mentee relationship. I've seen people give kind of casual advice. I've seen managers have employees that imitate their behavior and therefore the two grow closer. I've seen all kinds of unofficial stuff like that. But, since mentorship is so beneficial to a person's career and their sense of well-being, mental health in general, really just in tons of different ways, why do you think it's so rare that we have official mentorship happening in the workplace?
So I think it's rare because we don't always name it. As I look at the way we've thought about it in the United States and around the world historically, if we go back a generation, we would often talk about taking someone under our wing, to use a phrase that was out there. In a way, that was mentorship. Many workplaces have tried some formal mentoring programs with matching between a mentor and a protege. Sometimes you try to do it with a supervisor and the person being supervised, but that can be tricky because, generally you want the mentor to be someone who's always supportive, offering critical feedback when necessary, but always supportive. And it can be very difficult to judge someone in the way that a supervisor needs to and be a good mentor. So you can mix those two roles, but it can be very challenging sometimes. So again, I think, not all workplaces do it because it can be challenging to do. It can be costly to figure out how you're going to set it up. Oftentimes you get a lot more people interested in being mentored than people who volunteer to be mentors, because we really haven't educated people that it can be a great two-way learning relationship and not just, we talk about with teaching, we talk about sage on the stage, and a mentorship relationship shouldn't be a sage on the stage. It shouldn't be just me pontificating on things and offering advice to the person I'm mentoring. It should be me having a conversation with and having a relationship with. And so I think, again, forming the relationships can be hard. We sometimes form them and then we give people a checklist. Have you met twice this year? What did you discuss? And while that's a good way to get started, if the mentor and protege have no idea what they're doing, if that's all you ever do, then it's really not going to be that close relationship that you can imagine mentoring to be. And I think one other thing that we find is that a lot of people define mentoring in ways that make it hard to distinguish from coaching. And of course, you would know even better than I do. You know, coaching tends to be focused on a topic, a skill, an area, whereas mentoring can certainly involve elements of coaching, but hopefully it goes a lot bigger than that. I like to think about someone I've mentored who's a student in our MD PhD combined program at Johns Hopkins. If she needed to know how to run, and she focused on health economics, if she needed coaching on her econometric skills, that wouldn't be the best, you know, that's one question. If she needs mentoring on how to be a good health economist, I could certainly provide that to her given my training. But when I think about mentoring, I don't want to just figure out how to mentor her to be a good health economist. I want to figure out how to mentor her to experience the best life that she can. And that's something that we don't find very much of, because people tend to sometimes not develop close enough relationships to understand the holistic person. And in this particular example, it's someone who's in their mid-30s already, and you know, still wants to think about having a family. And so I could give her all the advice on how to become the best health economist she could if she worked 70 hours a week, but she never achieved that other goal. And maybe she'd be she could be a Nobel Prize winning health economist someday. But if she didn't also achieve the goal of having a family, would I have really done her well by giving her that advice? And so I like to think of mentoring as something that can be very holistic. That can be challenging to develop in the workplace because it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of commitment. It takes a willingness by both the mentor and the protege to have the conversations about, you know, how much time do we want to commit to this? What's in bounds and out of bounds we're talking about? And, you know, are we really willing to go beyond career and to help the person figure out how career fits into life? Or are we just trying to mentor the person to be a better accountant or manager or whatever they might be, which isn't a bad thing, but it's very different than what some of us are looking for and what some of us hope to provide in terms of mentoring.
Right. And that's a really good point. I mean, like you said, there's a difference in what a mentor represents versus a work trainer, work supervisor, a career coach that may or may not be employed by your company, so may or may not be associated with HR. I try to view people as fully formed adults, no matter what age they come to me at, or whatever their current voice is saying in their head about whether they're successful or whether they're failures, whether there's more to do or whether everything's been done, and so on and so forth. And so I let them tell me, I just facilitate in a way. I let them tell me what they want to get closer to, what type of life they want to have. And then together we work to get them there, because it's not my job to tell them how to live their lives. At the end of the day, I have to listen to what they want and simply provide them with a way to get there, which is an entire can of worms in its own. But this means that I am not motivated by any politics that happen within their company. I don't work at their company. I have no vested interest in any of that. I'm not their parents. I'm not a relative, a partner, or any of that. It's a completely separate relationship. So yeah, I guess mentorship is just as complicated as that, even more complicated as that. So what advice would you give somebody if they were looking for a mentor? Let's say they looked around their workplace and maybe they haven't found anybody there. Where else can a person look?
That's a great question. And I think there's two main areas, certainly. You know, one is just within your professional community, but not in your workplace. You know, are you a member of, you know, if you're an attorney, are you a member of the local bar association? As a health economist, there's an International Health Economics Association. As, you know, a faculty member at a business school, there's the Academy of Management. And so, you know, whether it's monthly local meetings, an annual conference, someone that you meet. It can be hard if it's an annual conference because you might first, you might have a random meeting at a networking event. And then you might have to ask, well, can I follow up with you if I have any questions? And then you send them an email. And and then it turns into a couple conversations, and then you might say, oh, could we turn this into a little more of a, could we call it mentoring rather than just giving some advice? And again, part of it is just being willing to name it rather than just leaving it as could I occasionally call on you for advice? People are a little bit further along in their careers, or sometimes it's in a totally different area. The other thing that I really think about is where in your local community are you interacting with people who are more senior than you are? In the United States, there was a gentleman named Robert Putnam who wrote a book called Bowling Alone. And there's this concept of social capital and how we seem to be losing it in the United States. And this book is now about 20 years old. But to the point, when, if we were to rewind to the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, there's some things we think about nostalgically, other things we might choose to leave behind from that era. But there were bowling leagues and softball leagues and fraternal organizations, and people went to religious services more often, and people were involved in community organizations more. And that was a way that brought together people of all generations, and multiple generations of adults. And you could meet somebody and you could, have coffee with them or go out for drinks with them afterwards and find out, oh, this person does something that's not exactly what I'm doing, but it's close enough I might seek advice from them. And then, the nice thing compared to an annual meeting of a professional association is that then you're not just seeing them once a year, then you're maybe seeing them weekly. Right. And you can really build a relationship much more quickly. The challenge is, at least in the United States, we don't have people participating in those sorts of things nearly as much as we used to. And so you don't have the weekly bowling league, the weekly softball game, or any of these other things that bring people together on a regular basis. Certainly in my community mentoring, several of the people I mentor came from a running group that I'm a part of, which was a weekly participation, sometimes even more frequently than weekly, with people of multiple generations who come together with a common cause. And so I think the other nice thing that in that phrase is to remember that if you have other people who have a common cause, a common interest, a common goal, something that brings them together, then it doesn't guarantee that you're going to have shared values, but it helps to give you some degree of certainty that you're going to share at least some values. And that'll help to more quickly build trust, which can then facilitate a more high quality mentoring relationship between the mentor and the protege if they're interested in making that next step in commitment, as opposed to just an occasional coffee after a workout or whatever else they might do.
Yeah, that's excellent. I'm totally on board with everything you just said, and that's a great way to think about it. You want to be, maybe this is not the most elegant phrase, but you want to be in a target-rich environment. You want to be in a place where you have access to people. Obviously, you want to have something in common with them because that helps you break the ice and form some sort of a relationship. They're no longer a stranger. You can walk up to them and say, how about that thing we just did, or that thing that we're about to do? And then you have some kind of very, very limited relationship, but it's already building. And then after some time, once you get to know them a little better, you can actually formalize it. And like you said, being a part of some kind of environment where you meet with people on a regular basis guarantees you access to that person on a regular basis. And whether you call it mentorship or not, perhaps you can sneak in your 1, 2, 3 questions. And perhaps, if you're not ready to formalize it, or you don't think that putting a label on it is necessary, or maybe would affect the relationship, I would say, think about those questions that you're going to ask them, and be prepared should an opportunity present itself. You could be in the middle of a pottery class and you could say, you know what, I've been meaning to pick your brain. What about that? And you're both sitting and you're next to each other and you have time to spare. Like, you have to think about the logistics of this. You have to be in a place where there's a sense of relaxation and comfort, and there's a little bit of trust, and give them enough time. It's, in a running group, this may be different. If you're trying to ask a life or career related question between the steps and you're running up the hill, this may not actually work out as well. But I say people just need to keep trying. You need to just keep trying, keep looking for these situations.
And I think, just to build on something you said, I like the phrase target rich environment, because sometimes the first person you talk to isn't necessarily the one who can offer you the best advice. But if it's an environment where that person is familiar with everyone else, they could say, well, I don't have good advice for you, but let me introduce you to this next person.
Yeah.
And certainly I didn't do too much mentoring during sprint workouts, but on long distance runs, at a fairly easy pace. I mean, some coaches even call it a conversational pace for that very reason, that you ought to be able to carry on a conversation. But certainly, as you said, there are any number of situations. And I think the other thing to recognize, it's the 1, 2, or 3 questions, but you also have to be very willing to be open about yourself, because the person's only going to be able to give you good advice if they know more than just surface level
Yeah.
details about you. So if the person says, well, I might be able to answer that, but tell me a little bit more, even if you've just met them and it's the first time at a pottery class or a paint night or something like that,
Painting.
that's where you would have to be willing then to take that next step in opening up, so that they can give you the best answer possible for you.
Absolutely. And my last question for you has to do with the work that you're doing to encourage others on an organizational level to take up mentorship. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So within the university, we have quite a bit going on, but it's all a bit here and there with no one coordinating it all at this point in time. And we have faculty mentoring other faculty, we have faculty mentoring students, particularly doctoral students, we have alumni mentoring students. I've started to get people to think about, well, is there, what's the role for staff in any of this? Staff are often the most forgotten group in higher education, but nothing gets done without them. And I would like to include mentoring in that. Mentoring should include them, both being mentored and doing some of the mentoring for students, and in some cases for faculty. But part of it is seeing the value, and the value comes through in a couple of ways. Somebody had asked me a couple years ago, why do I show up at the office every day without using my job description or my job title? And that was a harder question to answer than I thought it was going to be. But after several years, not pondering it 24/7, but really working through that, I wrote something for my kids last Father's Day, and it started out with the line, "Light paths to choose hope." And that really summarizes what I try to do in all of my mentoring relationships. I'm not making the choice for someone, but I'm trying to help them understand, here are a couple paths, here are the pros and cons of those paths, here's some angles on going down those paths you may not have considered before. Here's a path that you didn't even know about before, that if you take these 2 you were thinking about, you have this other option. And people tell me that I'm very good in helping them to think about reframing things. So part of it is really just trying to educate potential mentors. As I had mentioned a little bit earlier, this isn't just pontificating. This isn't just giving advice. It really should be a relationship. It really should be, and again, for those who aren't willing to commit to a whole relationship, at least commit to one conversation with active listening on both sides for 30 minutes. Start there, and then if you have a good conversation and there seems to be some kind of spark, schedule a second one. And then maybe you can build, because I've got mentoring relationships that have lasted anywhere from 1 year to 12 years.
Right.
And the 12-year one is still ongoing. And so it really is understanding that value. It should be a two-way street. There should be things you can learn from the person you're mentoring. If nothing else, it should bring you joy. And if you don't get joy from it, then I don't want to say don't do it at all, but find somebody that you can offer advice to, and take on what Erik Erikson, if we go back to our Psych 1 classes in college, in the 7 stages of life, mentoring really aligns very closely with generativity, in my mind anyway. And so sharing that knowledge, that wisdom with others in a way that you're not just doing it for yourself, but you're doing it with the goal of trying to benefit the other person, and making sure that it's about them first and foremost and not about you. You can get a lot from that. And so demonstrating that value, demonstrating the value of using what's in the literature about the best approaches to these things and best practices, and demonstrating the value not just of learning from the person you're mentoring, but then of having the opportunity to talk with other mentors and and, you know, creating some type of social learning circle to really learn about mentoring and value creation and this whole process that can benefit the individual, it can benefit the unit in a workplace, it can benefit the entire organization. So, you know, that's really where I hope to move the organization that I work for, even more than it has already, and help other people think about whether it's the right thing for their organizations as well. You know, part of it right now is just by talking with people. In the long run, I do hope to make it part of my research agenda as I move forward into the next part of my career.
That's amazing. I love talking to you in general because you're so well spoken. And I especially love talking to you on this topic because we both agree on the importance of mentorship, and the kind of the how you view it is very similar to how I view it. And your approach to mentorship is very similar to my approach to coaching, where you're just helping a person see things, you're reframing different topics and ideas in a different way. And it's a lot of what if this, have you thought about that? You know, you're helping to guide them, you're helping to make sure that they're well informed, that they have access to different types of thinking and resources and whatnot. At the end of the day, the work has to be done by that person and that person alone. And you're facilitating that growth, and it's amazing. It's highly rewarding. My coaching is highly rewarding. I can see that your mentorship has been highly rewarding to you as well. And yeah, that was a great little conversation. I loved having you here for this chat. And guys, if you need to speak to someone about mentorship, you have lots of questions, you can approach me, but even better, approach Kevin. I'm going to leave his information in the details below this chat, and please reach out to him and pick his brain about this. He is just, he's got a wealth of information. It's just like a repository of information about relationships and the value of passing on knowledge and life experience. So that was super great. Thank you so much, Kevin, for coming on my little mini interview. I really, really appreciate it. I hope you're doing well going forward. And guys, if you enjoyed this, there are more episodes to come. Thank you so much for joining. This is Lana and this is Kevin, and we hope you enjoyed yourself, and have a good one. Bye-bye.
All right.